A popular question for math that's closely associated with commission is the seller net after commission. Now, what this question has to do with is how much is the seller going to put in their pocket after they've paid their fees and also after they've paid their agent. Now, agents are typically paid as a percentage of sale. If it were otherwise, if they were just simply paid a flat fee, then this would be a very, very simple problem. Having said that, it's because the commission is often in a percentage that makes it a tricky problem. There's one trick to this particular question, and once you have the trick, and you will just repeat it every time, you will get these right 100% of the time. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. If you'd like to use the T-bar on this one, and I would highly recommend that you do unless you are mathematically inclined, basically what you're looking for is going to be the relationship between the net after commission okay. Ultimately, what you're going to be looking for in this question is going to be the sell price. In other words, what does the property need to sell for to net the seller the desired amount that he wants after the commission? Here's the trick to this particular question. In the rate box, we're actually going to put the inverse of the commission. So in, I'm going to go ahead and write that out, inverse of commission. So in other words, we oftentimes think of the commission as being 5% or something to that effect. Well, in this problem, you don't use the 5%, you actually use the inverse of that. So 100 minus that. So let me give you an example here. Let's say that the seller wants to walk away with $160,000 in his pocket. That's how much he wants to net after he's paid the commission. Now, he also, to do that, he has some closing costs that he needs to pay. Let's say the closing costs are going to be around $4,000. And again, these will be given to you in the problem. You're not going to be asked to ascertain these. We're looking for the sale price. And I'm going to tell you that this agent is going to be paid 5%. Well, if the agent is paid 5%, remember, we're going to use the inverse of that number. So we're going to put 95% here. Obviously, if the agent was being paid 6%, we'd put 94, etc. Okay. So now to solve this problem, we need to remember the rules of the T-bar. First, let's figure out what we have on the top. 164,000 are the two numbers added together. And then we have the net after commission divided by the inverse of the commission. And remember, on the T-bar, we divide at that point. So what we have is one final step here, 164 divided by 95% equals, and I'm going to take out my calculator here and calculate that. 164 divided by 0.95 is 172. Looks like 632. I just rounded that to a whole dollar. I think it's like 58-cent change, but nobody prices houses based on 58 cents. So you ask yourself, well, what did I find? Well, what you found was that this house needs to sell for 172,632 to accomplish the seller's net of $160,000. So we're going to do some problems based on this. And on each one of them, I wanted to ask yourself, what is it that we're looking for in this particular problem? But this is the seller net after compensation or commission, and this is going to be a very common test question. As a reminder, this question is the net after commission question, which the T-bar that we use for this one is net after commission. And one of the things I recommend students do, I won't do this every time, but as you're learning these T-bars, as you're learning these problems, just write down whatever you need to help you remember enough times that you just get it from muscle memory. Let me remind you, net after commission divided by the inverse of the commission, inverse of the commission, okay? Now let's go back and read the question here, see what we're looking for. A seller would like to net $180,000 on the sale of a property after paying a 7% listing fee. Now, understand what's going on here. After he sells his property, he wants to walk away with $180,000. And that's the only number we're giving you in regards to that net. He has to pay his agent 7% to accomplish this. So what's the minimum price at which the property can sell and accomplish this goal? Well, this is going to be the most simplistic version of this problem, because all we're going to do in this case is write the 180, because that's what he wants to net after paying the commission. And then remember, the inverse of the commission is just simply 100 minus 7%. So that's going to be 100 minus 7% is 93%, right? And then by doing a simple one-time function of divide, because that's what the T-bar says, 180,000 divided by 0.93 is going to be 193,548. And you see that in C as the answer there, 548. And then as you're learning these problems, remind yourself one more time, well, what did I actually find? What I actually found was the minimum price to sell that house for that he can accomplish his goal of putting $180,000 in his pocket, 193,548. Anything that he sells above that is going to be more than the 180,000, so he'll be in good shape. Moving slightly harder in the net after commission questions, we're going to add just a couple of variables to it, but it really doesn't change the question that much. So here's what's happening. A seller wants to net $40,000 after paying a 138 mortgage and $2,500 in closing costs. Okay, well, this is starting to sound familiar here. He wants to put $40,000 in his pocket. The problem is he still owes the bank $138,000. And in closing costs, he's going to have things he has to pay, like the deed prep and revenue stamps, things like that. So there's a couple of things he's going to have to pay. In this case, it adds up to $2,500. We're giving you that number. We're not making you solve for it. What is the minimum price that will accomplish the seller's goal? So in this case, we still start off with the seller's net. He desires $40,000 at the end of the day. To do that, he's got to pay off the bank, so he needs more money, doesn't he? So he needs 138 as well. And then he also has to pay those closing costs. So before he can net his 40, he still has to pay his closing costs. Look, if it had just simply said that the agent was going to get a flat fee, this would be a very, very simple problem. Having said that, it says he's being paid 8%, 5%. And remember, inverse of the commission goes down here. And that way we can find the sell price. So let's add all these numbers up top. 40,000 plus the 138 plus the 2,500 in closing costs. So technically, what the seller needs after commission is $180,500. And now if you recognize it, now we're at the same spot that the question was previously. We just take 180,500 and divide it by the inverse of the 5%, which is 95%. And that's going to be our answer. I have that comes to $190,000 even. Okay, so the answer there is going to be D. Now, on this video, I would like to talk to you about something that you don't do. Now, sometimes this confuses people. So if you're okay with this problem and you don't want to hear this, then you can cut off the video at this point. But having said that, notice that we always give you 4 answers. Among your 4 answers is the answer that we think you will most likely come up with if you're wrong. Obviously, the right answer is there, but the most likely wrong answer is there as well. Here's what some people mess up on this problem. Let me remind you, what I'm describing right now is a mistake. A lot of people will take the 180,500 that you see right here, the total that he needs to net, and because they don't understand how to do this problem, they will multiply that by the 5% and then add the 5% to the top. Here's the problem with that. Notice that answer B is what you would get if you did that. 180,500 times 1.05% is going to give you 189,525. We know that mistake, okay? Now let me tell you why that's wrong. The 5% commission is 5% of some number you don't know. And so unfortunately, you have to do it my way or some version of this that maybe you can do it algebraically. That would be fine as well. But you can't just simply add 5% to the 180,500 because the 5% is not 5% of that number. It's 5% of some number that you do not know. So let me remind you, we started out by showing you the right way to do this problem, and that's what's on paper. Okay. And then I came back and told you the most likely mistake you're going to make. Why do I do that? The reason I do that is if you know the mistake, if you can identify the mistake, you can avoid the mistake. As we get progressively harder with the net after compensation, I'd like you to take a look at this question. And I'm going to read the whole question first because ultimately I want you to understand what we're looking for. A seller would like to net $120,000 on the sale of her home. She has a remaining mortgage balance of $250,000 and her agent estimates closing costs of $4,500. If the agent's listing fee is 6%, how much would her compensation be on this sale? Now, notice in the first sentence or couple of sentences there, you knew exactly where we were going because you've seen this problem before. But notice that at the end, I changed the question. How much would her compensation be on this sale? In the past, we were looking for the sale price. Well, let me go ahead and mention this to you, and then I'll show it to you in writing. Does it make sense to you? If you knew what the sale price was, and you know what her compensation is going to be, 6%, then you could technically finish, you could figure out this problem using the same strategy that we've been using. So let's give it a shot here. So she wants to net $120,000 on the sale of her home. Okay, to do that, she has to pay off her mortgage of $250,000. Okay. Her agent has estimated that her closing costs are going to be about $4,500. So we add that there as well. And then you remember, once you recognize it's a net to seller problem or net after commission problem, you invert the commission rate. So 6% becomes 94%. And then let's add the numbers at the top. 120 plus the 250 to pay off the mortgage, plus the $4,500 to pay the closing costs, shows that we have 374.5. Check that number, looks right. 374.5 is what we really need to net after paying the agent their compensation of 6%. So here goes the 6% out the door. The seller gets to keep the 94%. So therefore, the sale price is divided by 0.94. The sale price is $398,404. Had this been our previous problem, you would be done. That would have been the answer if you were looking for the sale price, but you're not looking for the sale price here. What you're looking for is the commission. And at this point, I can tell you that there are two ways that you can solve for the commission. One is you could just simply take the sale price and subtract how much the seller gets to keep. So 398,404 minus 374,500. See, minus, and then obviously I'm just going to narrow this down to dollars. I'm going to eliminate the cents. It comes to 23,904. Let me look at my answers. 23,904. I see that that is D. I told you there were two ways that you could solve this problem. So let me show you the other way. Now that we know what the sale price is, we could simply take the sale price, 398,404, and multiply it by 6%, the commission. Hopefully, I'll get the same number. If not, it means I've done something wrong. 23,904 and change, of course. I just went ahead and truncated this so it comes out to a whole dollar, 23,904. It's a great question there because if this test likes you to do multiple steps, then this allows you to take it to its kind of its nth degree for our particular level. So I would like you to be familiar with this question, although I don't think it's the most likely question you'll see on the exam. Okay, as long as we're playing with the net after compensation or net after commission question, let's take it to another kind of absurd link. I don't think they're going to do this to you on the exam, but it teaches you a couple of questions that might serve you well in another portion of the exam. So let's look at what we're looking for here. What would the original list price of a house be? Well, that's new. Looking for the original list price. We were looking for the sale price, but now I'm asking you something different. If the seller netted 83.4 after paying off a loan of 250, closing costs of 500, and pay the agent a 6% commission. And then notice we tell you here the house sold for 90% of its original list price. Well, that's interesting because from our previous problem, what I can tell you is the sale price. From the net after compensation problem, what I learned from the T-bar is the sale price. But what I'm going to have to do in this case is take the sell price back to the original list price. So a little bit trickier here. So let's see what this one's going to look like. We need to find out what our sale price is. So let's go through the steps that we know we need to go through to get the sale price. 83.4 is what the seller wants to put in their pocket. 250 to pay off the loan. 5,000 because we said so. I mean, we tell you what the closing costs are. There's no way you could have calculated that without us telling you. And then the inverse of the commission, 94%. Okay. So now let's take these numbers. Let's add them up. 83,400 plus 250 plus 5,000. If my math is correct, that comes to 338,400. 338,400. And we know, of course, we're going to divide that by the number on the bottom. Divide by 94%, 5.94. And here's what we've learned. We've learned that our sale price is $360,000. We've learned that our sale price is $360,000. Well, here's the problem with that. This problem didn't ask us for didn't ask us for the sale price. It asked for the original list price. Now we know that 360 is 90% of this number. So this is where you have to use a little bit of discipline with the T-bar on this. Remember in our T-bar video, we talked about oftentimes the T-bar is made up of some part, some rate, and some whole. Would you agree that $360,000 is some part of what this house was ultimately listed for? It's the part that it sold for, but it's actually part of the listing price. So I'm going to put as the part as 360. We know the rate in this case, it sold for 90% of what it was originally listed for. And so over here, we're now looking for the list price, and we follow our rules of the T-bar. 360 divided by 90%, and you finally get to the answer at this question. Equal 400,000. Now, I know a lot of people that are not mathematically inclined. They're like, I don't even know what we just found. Here's what we just found. This is what the price listed for, the house listed for, $400,000. Either through negotiations or because of a price drop, they dropped it 10%. Well, 10% of $400,000 is 40,000. So 400,000 minus 40,000 is the 360 that it sold for. So we worked all the way back to list price. The answer is C in this particular case. And this is what I would categorize as a very complicated question for people that are not mathematically inclined based on the net after compensation. I don't believe it's the most likely example that you'll see, but it's kind of like the absurd lengths they could go to if they want to make a really difficult question out of this.